At some point last winter, I was going through clothes in my dorm room, packing for winter break. I picked up a red button-down that I had taken from my mom's closet, and the most subtle smell hit me. I knew immediately that the smell was exactly how my grandma smelled, and I was overcome with emotion. My grandma had passed years before, and I had not seen her for many years before she passed. She had Lewy body dementia and was in a nursing home across the ocean for my teenage years. I had no conscious recollection of how she smelled, and barely any memory of the person she was before the dementia. But, with a small whiff, I was flooded with a memory of who she was. Or, rather, what she felt like. The feeling of her presence. How was a shirt that was washed so many times and had not touched her skin in a decade able to trigger such a vivid representation of her in my mind, with just the smallest remnant of her scent? Hi, my name is Camila, and on today's episode of Brains on My Mind, I will be discussing a topic that has been on my mind recently: olfactory memory. Tell me about a smell that evokes a memory, and describe this memory for me.
I think a few different flowers, but particularly red rose smell. I don't know, have associated with being a kid, that it's not as much one memory as a set of memories of being a kid. Like I immediately remember my first house, which was covered on roses outside.
How is olfaction able to transport us back to the memory of a feeling so vividly? Is olfactory memory stronger than other sensory memories? Is there something about the way that olfaction is encoded that causes such a robust recall of memory? If you have taken an Intro to Neuroscience class, you may have noticed that olfaction is the only sense that bypasses the thalamus. Could this maybe have something to do with it? Rachel Hertz, a neuroscientist at Brown, well known for her findings on the science of smell, published a study in 2006 with some pretty relevant findings. She wanted to see if odor is better at evoking memory than our other senses. She took volunteer college students and presented them with a series of olfactory stimuli and stimuli from at least one other sensory system. Participants were first asked to rate the stimulus for familiarity, pleasantness, and intensity. They were then presented with an emotionally arousing picture and told to associate each subsequent stimulus to a different picture, writing out a description of the picture, listing the emotions they felt, and rating their emotions on a 9-point scale after each stimulus and picture presentation. At the following session, subjects were represented with the sensory stimulus and asked to describe the picture that was associated with it. Then they were presented the stimulus again and asked to write down what emotions it evoked. The stimulus was presented for a third and final time, and the participants were asked to rate the picture recalled on a 9-point scale for emotions. The results showed that the accuracy of the actual memory recall was uniform across all types of stimuli. Olfactory memories were not any more accurate or stronger than visual, tactile, or auditory memories. However, when compared to word, visual, and tactile stimuli, subjects listed more emotions, rated emotions with more emotional intensity, and expressed that the stimulus was more emotionally loaded when the stimulus was an odor. This suggests that odor-evoked memories can be tied to more emotions than other memories, creating this experience that feels like a heightened memory.
Sometimes when I walk around here and if I smell something like mulberries or jasmine or very particular things from Iran, I feel like I'm transported back to walking in the street there. And it's just this immediate, even though I'm in a completely different country across the ocean, suddenly I'm just back there with that smell. And it's very, very immersive experience.
Another study from 2011 by Amanda Miles and Dorothy Berntsen of Aarhus University in Denmark aimed to discover whether odors and tastes are uniquely linked to our distant past. Known as the Proust phenomenon, it is a common experience to be spontaneously transported to the past through an olfactory stimulus. And these researchers wanted to determine whether odor is unique in this ability. Their conclusion? Yes. Odors seem to have a unique link to our more distant memories. It could be that first encounters with an odor in childhood form a strong link to a memory, so much so that formation of a new association with this odor is difficult, therefore preserving the quality of the initial link.
The first thing that always happens is a little smirk on my face with the memory, just a little before I actually recall anything specific. And it's not like something visually represented, like, oh, this is what I was doing, but like just myself as a kid on my front yard, talking to people in the streets and just like walking around.
Now, let's take a step back and think about the olfactory pathway. What we perceive as a smell is a diffusion of a mix of odorant molecules in the air. These molecules enter the nasal cavity and bind to specialized receptors on the cilia of olfactory receptor neurons. These neurons then carry information about the odor to the olfactory bulb, where they map onto specific glomeruli. At this point, a sort of spatial code representation of the odor emerges in the olfactory bulb. Because olfactory receptor neurons map onto specific receptor-specific glomeruli in specific locations, the activity in the olfactory bulb is location-specific. So if one were to make a map of locations of activity in the olfactory bulb, this map would be specific to the specific odor that was presented. From the olfactory bulb, information about the odor goes straight to the primary olfactory cortex, bypassing the thalamus. The piriform cortex, part of the primary olfactory cortex, is able to relay information directly to the nearby hippocampus and amygdala without having to send it through the thalamus like other sensory inputs would. The hippocampus is known for its role in memory storage, and the amygdala is important for emotional processing. Researchers believe that this could explain why odor-evoked memories are so emotional and why they can be so well represented even after so much time has passed.
It's like very emotional, like it elicits emotion in a way that it wouldn't if I were to just like push myself to visualize it. And there's immediately that sense of like being that particular age and being back there. And it's just, it feels so real in that moment that it then has like this very like intense sense of like nostalgia and longing.
While there is still much to be discovered about how olfactory memory is stored, identifying the power of odors for eliciting emotion is revolutionary in that of itself. The ability of an odor to trigger an emotional state or bring to the surface lost childhood memories could greatly benefit the future of therapy and the treatment of psychological disorders. One such disorder that could benefit from odor-assisted psychotherapy is post-traumatic stress disorder, PTSD. Although there doesn't seem to be much research done on the subject, it seems to me that the power of smell could be harnessed to usher patients into an emotional state where they feel safe to process traumatic memories. The studies I discussed in this episode answered most of my questions, but one matter still stands. We have yet to fully understand how memory is encoded. And until we get there, we're just gonna have to keep being curious. You've been listening to Brains on My Mind with Camila. Have a good night.